hospitality. They are hosting this event.
Oh,
Yes, and the incredible sumptuous eateries that we all have. The other thing is I want to thank 4 commentators. Unfortunately, 2 of them cannot be here, but the other 2 are here. There's Kevin Tan here, a constitutional lawyer, and Yong Si Hyun here, who I describe as a social activist.
I just want to get my face up to be recognized. Thank you.
The other 2 persons are Lim Soon Heng, who is ex-Keppel shipyard, who I have been discussing with concerning floating bridges from Singapore to Batam. Okay? Then they are very interested because it's big business. And then Inderjit Singh, unfortunately, just messaged me last night that he has to go to Oslo on an urgent business trip. Otherwise, we will have the benefit of his views concerning small and medium-sized enterprises, which is a very critical issue for the future of Singapore technical capability as well as entrepreneurship. So this is our problems. So welcome everybody. The title of my talk today is somewhat different from the advertised title, but also related, because the issue which our young graduates and our students ask themselves, I teach at the NUS, they always ask themselves, what is the future? Many of them think that their future is like a straight line, that they are trained with a degree or a diploma, and somehow it will be okay. They will get jobs and so on and so forth. But I think we all know that Singapore is now going through a very critical moment. The global situation has changed completely. China is now on the horizon. We have China investing in Southeast Asian region, right? And yet we have a 52-year-old Singapore motor car, which is our system, which needs a thorough overhaul, right? I've said on the Facebook, the whole of today, we have a very entertaining series of exchanges on Facebook, that the wheels are okay, the chassis is good, even the bodywork is not bad, but the engine needs serious work. Okay? It's smoky, needs decarbonization. So this is the situation, right? So we need a new engine, and some people suggested not only new engine, we need a new driver. I wonder who is talking about. But I would add, we need a new roadmap. So today, tonight I want to talk about a roadmap. Okay? Singapore needs to be bold. I don't think we need to labor this point. I think we all know. Just like our old pioneer leaders. We need a new mindset. But it's not easy to come by. And because of this mindset issue, I will want to relate the education issue of our tertiary education, our school system, and also to the prospects for new economic dimensions which we need to pioneer. On the old pioneers, let me just say this. An old friend of mine who used to be a senior civil servant told me this about Dr. Goh. Dr. Goh would ask the department, give me a position paper on this and this. So they would submit a report. And Dr. Goh would say, if your report is more than 3 pages, I throw away in the basket. Okay? So they submitted a 3-page report. Then Dr. Goh would look at it and says, where is your view? I know this is your department's view. What is your view? If you don't have a view, I don't talk to you. So everybody got a message. And thereafter, they all submitted a minority view, the official view, but a minority view. This is the mindset of those days, because the leaders in those days, the old pioneer leaders, were interested in not just the official view, they wanted to see the spectrum of opinions, because they were interested in not only scanning across all the issues involved, but also to bring out from the bureaucrats that they were handling an inquisitiveness which are necessary. So together with the leaders and the bureaucrats under them, there was a tremendous release of energy, and that produced the Singapore miracle. Okay, so this is something that has changed. In the meantime, as we have developed tremendously, our GDP has grown by leaps and bounds. Our reputation in the world is fantastic, and so on. And our system has become routinized, right? So we were talking earlier on that Singapore's situation is stuck between the KPI and the what was that? The
you cannot remember.
No.
I can't remember what I said.
The official procedures, right? So it's between the procedures and the evaluation. SOP and the KPI. So you're stuck there. So the recent talk by Lim Siong Guan talks about alluded to the 4 stages of decline of an empire, and that we are maybe in the last few phases where there's he calls it decadence. Okay, so I think we are all aware, and we need to move from there. In August, I published on Facebook this essay, How Now Singapore, and Revisiting the Lee Kuan Yew's Hard Truths. In it, I posited that the globalization model, on which the whole growth of Singapore, direct foreign investment, attraction of direct investment from the developed countries, was the basis of the Singapore growth system. It was also based on his genetic theory that you need to plug out from the society the top, the genetically endowed people. And that's why he coined the phrase of the jumbo jet generation, right? That if these 480 people, the top brains of Singapore, were in this jumbo jet, and the jumbo jet crashed, that's the end of Singapore. So that's his viewpoint. I think his genetic theory has been overtaken by the new science of epigenetics, which is that the genetic endowment is switched on or switched off by environmental influences that affect the epigene, which is the switching mechanism, right? So my optimism about the future of Singapore is that every human being has 100 billion neurons in the brain, and that each neuron has 10,000 axons, right? Which means that there are 100 trillion possible synapses in the human brain. And if the environment is correct, Singapore can be an incredible nation, the first one in the whole of human history to produce 100% geniuses, not just the 480. So this is my thought. All right, it's naive optimism, but it leads to many other considerations. Okay. Now, in all the discussions that I have been having, the problem has always been how to link the big picture and the small picture. If you go on Facebook, you find that most of the discussion is concerned about the small picture. That means all the little nitty-gritties that people are upset about or concerned about and so on. I think they are important. But there is a need. Is there a problem with this?
Much louder now, yeah.
You need to.
I need to be
talk
closer like
here.
this. Okay.
Oh, you want to try this?
Hello? Okay, this is much better. Yeah. So tonight's talk, I want to link the big picture and the small picture so that we can see the connection, right? So this is the biggest picture. Right now, the biggest picture is the world. And the One Belt and One Road initiative from China. I don't want to comment too much about it, but just to say that the land bridge is problematic. There are so many issues along the road, along the track. But the seaward road, the Maritime Silk Road, is traditional. It has always been there, and and Singapore has been a major node on the Silk Road. And therefore, I think that the Bridge and Road Initiative from China, the priority, whether they like it or not, will be Southeast Asia. So then the question is, what is our role in that? Okay, I'm very glad that our Prime Minister and the whole cabinet went to China recently, and hopefully they succeeded in patching up some of the rough patches that have emerged in the last few months. Secondly, there was this very important meeting between Jokowi and Lee Hsien Loong in Singapore, celebrating the years of friendship between Indonesia and Singapore, and the flypast of Indonesian jets together with Singapore jets. I think it's very significant, right? I will want to develop this idea much more because I think our future is going to be in Indonesia. I will say one thing else. Many years ago, I had a meeting with Philip Yeo when he was chairman of EDB. And this was, as a result, the meeting was about how do we increase the Singapore investment in Sumatra. He totally agreed to that. So he called in the desk officers in EDB and asked them, what's your focus? And they said, our focus is Jakarta. And he point blank told them, wrong. Our future is in Sumatra. So this is the picture, right? And I think that is still true. So now China has taken on the capitalist path, leading towards what they call socialism. And it has great implications on the environment and on culture. And will it be damaging or inspiring? That's the question that we have to hold in the back of our mind. Because the relationship between China and Southeast Asia and ASEAN is a totally asymmetrical relationship. It's between the small and the big. Unless ASEAN increases its economic integration, unless ASEAN begins to play a much more important integrating role, we will lose out in that relationship. It's very simple. So, a lot of my discussion will be about how do we increase ASEAN integration. So this is I talk about the biggest picture, now this is the big picture. The big picture is that the Malacca to Rupat Bridge has been revived from 1995, which was proposed by the Malaysians. And then, similarly, we proposed the Singapore-Batam Bridge in 1995. This was a project between the Institute of Architects Malaysia, Institute of Architects Indonesia, and the Singapore Institute of Architects. So we conceived of this idea of the Singapore-Batam Bridge. And then at the end of that, we said we will brief our respective ministers. So I briefed Mabotan, who was then the minister in charge of transport. So at that meeting with Mabotan heard it with interest, but I could see that there wasn't going to be any action. Keep me informed, he said. So we kept him informed. So this is now the picture. 2013, there was a meeting in Koh Samui between Thailand, Indonesia and Malaysia. And the bridge, the Malacca to Rupat bridge was resuscitated. Then of course, it died a natural death, went into doldrums, and then now it's been revived by China. Okay? It's in the context of the Chinese investment in the Malacca port. Now, so this is the big picture now. I want to go now to the small picture. And the small picture is this. If Singapore is going to play an important role in ASEAN, and in particular in relation to Batam and Sumatra, we need a whole new mindset. And how to get this new mindset? The National University is here, Polytechnic is here, UTown is here, this is AYE, this is SIT. These are all the new industries, Fusionopolis and Biopolis and so on. So if we conceive of this whole thing from Westport, which will become a housing area, because the port is going to move to Tuas. Imagine 200,000 people here. Imagine 100,000 students here. This is going to be education city. But the question is, what kind of education, right? So I will talk about this and report on some of the developments. Another aspect of the small picture, this is Singapore. These yellow blobs are our existing housing estates. They are livable, but not smart. How do we turn Singapore into a brain? How do we turn Singapore into a 100 trillion neuron system? That is the question, right? So, the suggestion with my students is we will insert into every housing estate a central nervous system. What is a central nervous system? The central nervous system is the connecting tissue in which all the intelligence of the community travels through this system. Which means all our existing schools should be demolished because they are in the wrong places, based on a wrong idea that children study best in quiet places. That's really a 19th century notion. In today's world, children must study in busy places so that they are not only book smart, they are also life smart. This is critical. So therefore, the central nervous system is in fact the school. So imagine a long connected school in which students are upstairs and the community is downstairs. Control points, teaching, book learning, life learning. Okay? Connect all the housing estates together, connect it to the park connectors, the transport system, and so on and so forth. In other words, city becomes a brain. Okay? So education city of NUS, Polytechnic and so on is just one part, one component of the larger concept of the whole island as a university. That is how incredible this is. Think of Boston, 16 universities, the brain center of the whole of the United States. Think of
over 50 universities.
how many?
50.
50 now. My gosh.
I mean the larger area.
Okay. So imagine Singapore as Boston of ASEAN. Imagine thousands of Indonesian students, Thai students, Vietnamese students, Filipino students, China students, Indian students studying together with our students, living on campus. The friendships that are formed, the learning interdisciplinary learning, the crossing between cultural and linguistic barriers, This is the future, right? So we're not going to get there given our existing SOPs and KPIs. Okay, so this is where we are really in this crisis moment. So we had a meeting. This is look at the date. 24th of April 2014.
I was there.
Yes, Kevin was there. Yes. So we presented this concept at the Institute of Policy Studies. How about educating Singapore's next generations towards the super school concept? The super school is what I'm talking about. The super school is the central nervous system of the whole island. Right? That means primary school, kindergartens, secondary schools, right? Pre-U, ITE, polytechnics, universities, all are linked together. Right? So which means that the flow of information and knowledge of exchange is enhanced. The epigenetics switches on the genetics. This is a fundamental shift in thinking. Right? At this meeting, one of the IPS guys reported that they had a previous meeting with big-time foreign investors in Singapore. And they said, in utterly bold words, we prefer to employ a second-rate Australian graduate than a first-rate Singapore graduate. Why? Because the Australian got savvy, got initiative. You guys don't have it. It's as serious as that. So we are really in a crisis. And I was at a meeting organized by the International Business Council last year, together with, and they invited MOE, because the International Business Council wanted to know what is your thinking about education, because we have certain reservations about your student graduates. I was there. And the MOE panel, 5 of them, trotted out all the statistics. We are fantastic, we score high in the PISA test, international tests on mathematics, science, and so on. We are top. Okay? And a question came up from the floor. What about your classroom sizes? And they said point blank. MOE says, there is no correlation between classroom size and learning attainment. And the Singapore classroom sizes are, at that time, about 40. Okay? So I couldn't tahan this thing, I said. But of course, you need to thank the private tuitions for that, right? Because it is precisely why you need small classes, so that the teachers can spend more time with the weaker students. The present weaker students are now taking private tuition. Even the better students are taking private tuitions, so that they score higher than even the weaker students. Right? So we have to thank the private tutors for that. So classroom sizes have to be smaller, and to have smaller classroom sizes means we need more teachers. So at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, where are the teachers going to come from? Right? Pay higher salaries and close down all the private tuition, so that they all become regular teachers. Private tutors will hate me for that. Okay, so this is the story. Right now, I'm going to tell you what happened after this. So at this meeting, a lot of the ex-school principals and teachers were at this meeting. There were 40 of them. And there was a great concurrence of ideas and enthusiasm. So, this is my student project, where all the schools are on the upper floors in an existing housing estate, and the shops are below, right? All the classrooms are aircon, okay, so that the traffic noise is eliminated. I will talk about aircon and other later on, because I think there are ways to solve this problem, the cost problem, right? So this is the core group, the super school team leaders, right? These are the top school principals, ex-school principals, right? Mr. Cole here used to be one of the directors of MOE, right? And he was a key organizer of all the ex-school principals. So we had a whole series of meetings to flesh out the ideas, right? So there's tremendous amount of energy, okay? So these are the kind of meetings, right? It's fantastic, right? And huge amount of energy. And then it died. It died because they went back to MOE to tell them what they are doing. One word killed the whole project, right? And the word is, you are all being presumptuous. One word killed the project. Presumptuous because who the hell are you to take on the task of MOE? We are the authority. You are nothing. Okay? On top of that, I realized that all the ex-school principals, the best ones, who supported the project, it is invidious because they are all on retainer fees. Because they are employed on a one-off basis with a retainer to act as consultants to various schools, and many of them go to Myanmar, go to Indonesia, to Kazakhstan and all these things, right? So it died. But the idea is not dead. I am confident the idea of the super school will come back, but under certain conditions. So after that, I realized to shift the attention, because when you in the process of meeting all the school principals and teachers and all that, I learned a few things. I learned a lot of things. Number one, there are major changes going on, initiated by MOE, from preschool to pre-U, right through. But you're only going to get, at best, results in 20 years. Much too late. But you must do it still. So I switched my attention to higher education. If we change our campuses, the mindset in our campuses, we can get results within 5 to 6 years. How? Four key strategies. Number one, all students must live in. Right now, only 10% in NUS live in. And they are paying $500 a month. So with my students, we did a research project. We use shipping containers, which are very, very cheap. We can house students at $100 a month, which is what they are already paying for their transport to and fro. Plus, they are wasting 2 hours of traveling time. So if we have able to have cheap accommodation within campus, right, the campus life culture will be very different. Okay? And on top of that, if we co-locate small and medium-sized enterprises and social enterprises on campus at extremely low cost, with the requirement that the SME leaders and the social enterprises must do tutoring and mentoring. That way, rubbing shoulders with the kids, they will become not only book smart, which they are, they will also be life smart. Plus, if you have the Asian language mastery, right now the choices are French, Japanese, German. Why not Malay, Thai, Filipino? There are some courses, but not major courses. And students are not opting for these so-called lower languages. They are looking for the European languages because they see their future there. Their understanding about the future is still based on the old, export-based industries from Europe, America, and so on. The future seems to lie there. Our students have not yet realized that the future is not there. The future is in Asia, okay? And particularly the future is in Southeast Asia. So this, the next strategy is no more lectures, everything online, but there must be huge amounts of tutorials, right? And there are whole discussion about, the pedagogical curriculum aspects of it. And on top of that, bicycle everywhere. Now let me go back to this map. From here to here is 8 kilometers. Okay. In our master plan for NUS, with an elevated bicycle track, everywhere is reachable within 5 minutes. Okay. With this bicycle track, everywhere is reachable within 20 minutes. Which means that technical education, right? SIT, technical education, university can be interrelated. This implies that there is a curriculum change, which means that the final phase of education is everybody qualifies in terms of the accredited modules that you take. So a lawyer may also take a module in architecture or a module in dentistry or something like that. So your employability or your capability depends on your accumulation of modules. So the degree or diploma dissolves finally, right? Everybody is judged according to your capability, not according to your degree or diploma or whatever. This is all nonsense in the 21st century. It's your knowledge that matters, okay? And your character, your capability, your inquisitiveness, your ability to take initiative, to be creative, and so on. That is all that is what matters. Okay, all right. So this is the NUS campus. All these brown things are shipping containers. We tested the limit, right? With 100,000 people. That's untenable. But for 40,000 people, all you need is this low-rise containers. Okay. So a report. Okay. So this project, these are my students. The students presented to Liu Baoshun, who is the senior advisor to the National Research Foundation, and also advisor to Prime Minister's Office on Science. And this is Tan Eng Chai, who is the provost, that means deputy president.
New president.
And now new president. And I'll tell you how that happened. So they all are very excited, they agreed with this idea. A friend of mine then reported these ideas to Ong Yi Kang, Minister for Higher Education. So Ong Yi Kang called me, that was end of 2015. Okay. Then the whole of 2016, at that meeting he agreed. The point that really hit him was, you can change mindset within 5 to 6 years, right? He agreed with that. He agreed with the 4 strategies, particularly the housing strategy. Okay. At the end of the meeting, he said he will send a letter, a note down to Provost, implement pilot project, which he did. He sent a letter. Immediately after that, the whole of 2016 series of meetings between me and the university administration, the finance department, and the estates department, the development department. Everything agreed. Okay. Then no funds. Not because there's no money. The money is completely dedicated, is sequestered to get ranking. Okay. So that means the funds can only be used for academic purposes, not for housing. So we are stuck. So we've been stuck since then until 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, my student who graduated 13 years ago, who is now a millionaire, out of the blue called me and said that I want to do something for the university. What can I do? I told him about this project. He says, I will finance it. So, last week we had a meeting with the dean and the estate department. So now we are on the process. Right? So the first pilot project will be for 50 students, right? Because we have the proof of concept that the containers look very good and that it's acceptable and the students like it. So this is important. Okay. Hey, Soon Heng, come. Let's try and get it. Soon Heng is from Keppel, so we will talk about. Can we find a seat in front? We'll talk about the floating bridge.
Okay.
So these are containers, which is not unusual at all. Dutch universities, German universities have been using shipping containers like nobody's business for their students. So it's not a new idea at all, right? So bearing in mind that Singapore is now in the stage where we always want to be second best. So we have to show to them that other people have done it. The question which is always asked, any new idea, has it been done before? So yeah, it's been done before. So this is another of my students' projects, where the central nervous system, right, is flanked by all these student housing and offices for small and medium enterprises and so on, right? And imagine that this central nervous system that stretches from NUS right through the Polytechnic, right, is flanked by student housing all along the way. Imagine this is the students' Orchard Road. This is how powerful the synaptic potential of learning can be. So this is the kind of imagination my students come up with. Right? This is the kind of typical room. This is 8 feet across here, right? Very livable. So we're going to prove this. We're going to show it, right? There's some discussion now with IKEA. IKEA will furnish it. And IKEA is interested because it's huge business, right? Imagine 400,000 student housing in Singapore. Man, that's big business, okay? So I met Ong Yi Kang, he agreed, send note to NUS, implement pilot project. Now 2 years is now on. So the next question is that, now this is so far I've been talking about the small picture. Now I'm going to zoom out to the big picture, right? Because it's connected. How can Singapore be the hub of the China-ASEAN trade and finance? And we can do it if we dare to think big. We need a new mindset. How do we do that? This is the picture. Imagine this is your Singapore to Batam crossover. First phase Singapore Batam, second phase Batam Sumatra. Then link it all up to Malacca. So this becomes the new ASEAN core. What are these pink dots? These are potentially new rural-urban settlements. What are they going to do there? Sumatra is 3 times the size of peninsular Malaysia, with a very small population, huge amounts of land, at the moment mostly used for oil palm. Can we imagine rural-urban settlements dedicated to food production? Can we imagine the food being trucked across to here or here and all the way to China? 3 days can reach Kunming with a refrigerated truck. We can feed China. This is the equation which ASEAN needs, right? To create the imbalance between Chinese economic power and ASEAN potential. This is our future. The old mindset was, let's look west. Okay? That was important, and it produced incredible economic growth and future of Singapore. But now that is going down. We now need a new paradigm. And that paradigm is, how can Singapore become the trade and financial center of ASEAN? Okay? I'm trying to encourage one of my thesis students this year to imagine an ASEAN trade center sitting on top of the what is that place called? The Gardens by the Bay. Right? So you have this tower which houses all the ASEAN economic development, the bank. Singapore should have an ASEAN bank. Okay? And since Soon Heng here is here, I did my arithmetic. This bridge, Singapore-Batam Bridge, all the way to here is, my estimate of the cost is $6 billion. Right? So I asked Chris Kwan, our banker friend, is it possible to raise a bond? There's no problem. As long as it is guaranteed by Singapore, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Once you guarantee that, money flow, done. So I will ask Soon Heng later to talk about how can we build this bridge, and how can the act of building this bridge produce for Singapore a whole new growth industry, which we need. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's it. So in order to build this whole thing, right? We need graduates from polytechnic, from ITE, from universities who are savvy, who speak the language. They not only must speak English, they must speak Malay, and they must speak Hokkien. Right? This is the new Sri Vijaya. Okay? Because you need to go down to the ground, right? You've got to develop better schools, hospitals, housing, right? Farm practices, right? Agricultural production, right? All kinds of value-added enterprises in relation to agricultural products and so on, right? So these are you need a whole new kind of people, right? Not the kind that is just book smart, no initiative. That's over, right? So we have to tell our students, if we are going to train you to be just book smart, forget it, you have no job. So we have to start to retune the mind. Okay. And I also want to suggest that our polytechnic students should live on campus. Once they live on campus and don't go home to mommy, their mind changes. Okay. Very important.
I think you're going to change the mummy's minds.
Can't. All of us know you cannot change a woman's mind.
In the future, it will be the daddy's minds you have to change.
Yes, because the daddy is controlled by the mother. So I think that a lot of things have to change, let's face it, right? And I think you got to start somewhere, right? So I think the starting place is in higher education, and then let it filter down, right? So this is the big picture. Okay, so this is the back to the belt. Okay, so this is the map, right? The Chinese map from Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Kuala Lumpur, and all the way through Indochina to Kunming, right? And the whole of Indochina. So this is what the Chinese are planning. This is the map which the Chinese have produced, right? The Malacca, I don't know why Teluk, because this is nearer at this point. Teluk to Upat Island, and then cross to Dumai. Dumai is the oil center, the Caltex oil center, right? The difference between the Singapore-Batam Bridge and the Malacca Bridge is that Singapore-Batam Bridge has a captive traffic, whereas the Malacca-Rupat will take a long time. Because the Rupat Island is double the size of Singapore, its population is only 50,000. Eventually it could well be, the population could well be 4 million. But that's going to take a long time. Okay? So therefore the financing potential of this bridge is inferior to the Singapore-Batam Bridge. So this is where we have an
Dubai
advantage.
is also a very big port for palm oil.
For what?
Palm oil.
Yes, palm oil. And of course petroleum, right? Caltex is there. But it's a horrible town. The reason why a lot of the Indonesians prefer to go to Batam is because they can visit Singapore, see. Right, so this is we have an advantage because we are more advanced state. So this is the Malacca Sumatra Bridge. This drawing is produced by the Chinese. Of course, where the shipping lanes are, which is here, you need a suspension bridge. The Singapore-Batam Bridge will be basically floating bridges, right? And then when it crosses the shipping lines, it will be a suspension bridge. The typical cost of a suspension bridge globally is about 2.5 billion, right?
Regardless of span.
The average spans are about
600.
no, the biggest one is the Kasai Ayo Band bridge in Japan, 1.8 kilometers.
Single span.
Single span. And they had to develop a whole new metal technology involved and so on. So the Japanese are way ahead on that one. Chinese are also very advanced on suspension bridges because they built a lot in China, right? So it's very likely that the Batam bridge will be suspension bridge, but the floating bridge is where we can do it at extreme low cost. The floating bridge in Seattle is $60,000 per meter span, per meter length. Okay? If we were to build it in Batam, I think we can half the price. So based on that, 100 kilometers of floating bridges will be, what is it? 3 billion. Peanuts. We just lost how many billion in the GIC? Okay? So, the floating bridge idea is very important as an economic activity of Singapore, and I'm very happy to have met Soon Heng here, who's ex-Keppel, right? And Keppel needs a whole new branch of industry because the ship repair is on the way down. The oil rigs also, demand is not there. So they need a whole new thing. But to do floating bridge construction, you need big land. We don't have. So I think Batam will be the best place. And once it's floating, you can float it anywhere. So imagine thousands of bridges all over Southeast Asia. Okay? So this is a huge industry. So Malaysia, Singapore, and Sumatra can become the new integrated heart of ASEAN. ASEAN has been talking forever about ASEAN integration, right? So the will is there, but the reason for actually implementing it is not there. So therefore, it is only talk. It's a NATO, right? No action. But with the Chinese intervention into Southeast Asia becomes real. Okay? And Singapore Malaysia is the bridge all the way to China. The physical land bridge as well as the maritime bridge. Right. Some discussion I had with people concerning the Thai people concerning the Kra Canal. They say it's very unlikely because the politics, they are very afraid that once you have the canal, they will lose the whole southern Thailand. The Patani movement will take over. So this is not acceptable. So this is too much of a risk for Thailand to take. So they may still do it some years later, we don't know. But Singapore must take a decisive action to make it unlikely through our intervention. How do we act decisively like the old pioneer leaders, right? So this is our current problem. This is Jokowi discussing with the Chinese officials on the Chinese high-speed rails in Java. This is the proposal, my proposal for geothermal and thorium nuclear energy grid that connects the whole of Southeast Asia and South China. Important to link South China into Southeast Asia in terms of energy grid. Okay? Geothermal at the moment is expensive because the drilling cost is expensive. Given the decline in the oil and gas industries, the drilling companies will probably be able to lower their prices to do geothermal drilling. Okay? So if we have that together with the thorium nuclear, which the Chinese are leading in thorium nuclear development, this is a highly possible scenario. All right. Another very important change in the global picture is e-commerce, which Jack Ma has pioneered. That means the small producer, even in the Sumatra village, can sell to the world through e-commerce. Which means rural poverty can be eliminated, and we can be the facilitator towards that development. In other words, we can do well by doing good. In the past, it is we do well when other people don't do so well. Now we do well by doing good, so that they do well, we do well. This is the connectivity logic. Actually, there's a very interesting story here which I came across, which is Chinese wisdom. I cannot resist telling this story. Bear with me. The fence. On this side of the fence is a hunter with terrible, fierce dogs. On this side of the fence is a sheep farmer. Okay? The dogs jump across the fence and kill the sheep. So the sheep farmer don't know what to do. Ask wise man what to do. Shall I go and kill the dogs? Wise man said, no. Give the most beautiful little lambs to the hunter's children. So he did. He gave the little lambs to the children. The children loved the baby lambs, you see. And the hunter then locked up all his dogs so that they don't kill the lambs. So there was wonderful relationship between the farmer and the hunter. This is the future. Not the American model, which is, we'll bomb the hell out of you. North Korea. Okay, so this is the kind of new civilizational thinking that we hope the relationship between China and Southeast Asia can be more inclusive and more friendly. Right? So I think there are ancient Chinese wisdoms that can be brought to play. Of course, China also has the kind of cowboys that Americans have. Americans are not a monopoly of cowboy mentality. So this is my student, PhD student, who actually he pioneered e-commerce in China. he gave a laptop to the village grocery shop owner, who is 50 over years old, and taught him how to use it. He immediately was very interested. He started to sell his pomelos, which he used to sell at 1 renminbi pomelo. With the e-commerce, he was selling it to the nearest town 100 kilometers away at 10 renminbi. So the village became rich. Jack Ma heard about it. Jack Ma came, visited him, right? And immediately, this is 3 years ago, immediately Jack Ma organized 5,000 villages for e-commerce. And now it's almost the whole of China. And now Jack Ma is talking about the whole world. That small business can have a world market. So this changes the equation. But it means a different kind of mindset involved to do this. Right? Okay, so this is where we have to teach our students to think differently. So this is the kind of concept that I developed. Rural-urban settlements, right? Typically 1 kilometer in diameter maximum, right? Surrounded by vegetable farms, and beyond that, large plantations with primary forests and so on. So ecologically, it's possible to compute the total flow of nutrients, right? From the food to the houses, and how do you collect all the excrements and waste, and how do you recycle that into the, in other words, you complete the nutrient cycle. Okay. So this is, you have low density, medium density, and high density, right? So this is what the rural-urban settlement pattern may be like, right? This is in Vietnam. We are working on a project in Vietnam. And this is another form which is 100,000 people in one square kilometer, right? So if we have 70 of these, we can put it all around the Singapore island, theoretically, and we have 7 million people. And all surrounded by farms, so we are self-sufficient in vegetables, and we have a huge amount of green space. And all the tigers can come back to the central region. So it's just a matter of rethinking the whole urban planning paradigms, which are completely stuck in terms of all the usual professional ways of thinking. So I look at the whole world, right? This is the total amount of agricultural land and pasture land in the whole world, 49 million square kilometers, right? If we have 40,000, can you see?
Hard to see it. Change the color.
I can't, I don't know how to do. If you have 40,000 modular cities, each is 100,000 people, this one dot like that. Okay? So in other words, from this study, my conclusion is that you don't need big cities anymore. I don't know how to do it.
See lah.
I think that's an image, so it's hard.
Is it image?
No, it's not PowerPoint, it's all image.
Oh, okay. Can't do it. Yeah.
And so I'm challenging the whole ideology of what I call metrophilia. The big city as the inevitable. Yes, urbanization is inevitable, but the question is what kind? And if you talk to town planners, none of them ask this question. They all believe in the big mega city as inevitable. They never ask the question, what kind of other forms of urbanization? Never ask. It's not in the curriculum. School is terribly important. This is a school I built in Thailand, in the poorest area of Buriram province in Thailand. Right. This is a bamboo dome, 30 meters diameter, no columns. The children now are the school doesn't believe in exams. They learn by projects. This is the basis of the super school concept, which I learned from Michai Viravaida in Thailand, right? He started this school. the Ministry of Education insisted to give the children an exam. And they have never taken an exam before. So they are not exam smart. They scored in the top 10% of Thailand. So I'm convinced, if you change the curriculum, if you change the environment, if you change the way the students relate to the teachers and to the curriculum and the way of learning, you can change the mind. It's epigenetics that controls the genetics. This is Lee Kuan Yew's greatest error. So this is what this is 1 kilometer, right? So this is 100,000 people. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is 600,000 people. If you need 1 million, just put 10. Okay? So imagine this is all farms. Imagine this is all over Sumatra. This is done by my students. So we really have to teach our students to be really comprehensive rather than just specialists in one silo. That was useful at the earlier stage of Singapore's development, but now we are at a different stage. We need a different mindset. This is a good friend of mine who is an inventor, and he invented this system, right? This is very important. This is where all the sewage is collected and pumped into these bags which produce algae. It produces 100 tons of algae per hectare per year. Oil palm produces 6 tons of oil per hectare per year. In other words, oil palm as an industrial product, not for food, as an industrial product is obsolete. You don't need to burn the forest. This is crucial. If you can collect all the shit, you can turn it into oil, right? Through algae. This is the reason why you must have compact settlements. You cannot have dispersed settlements and collect all the shit, right? So shit equals oil. Simple.
How does algae become oil?
There are 1,000 varieties of algae, right? There are several varieties where the algae contains huge amounts of lipids, right? So in this system here, the trucks bring the algae is pumped into this tank, right? Collected here. Then it's dried, it's squeezed, and the oil comes out and it's taken away. Okay. So this is highly feasible. And the oil can then be used for biodiesel, which is useful for small agricultural machines, which they are already doing in North Vietnam, right? So the kind of products that we produce in Singapore may well be agriculture productivity enhancing machines, which India and China produce a lot. Japan also, because the Japanese farmers are getting old, so they need machines. Okay, so we can't beat them. What we can do is, you see, the present farm family in Sumatra, husband, wife, and maybe 4 children. The wife has to do the cooking, the food processing, and washing. The moment we can invent a solar-powered washing machine and a solar-powered refrigerator, we can double the output of the farm family. Because the woman doesn't have to go and do all the chores, right? So this is a crucial industry that we should produce. So Polytechnic should invest in this development. I'm thinking of a flat pack. When you want to export a refrigerator, you don't want to export the air inside. Crush it. Do the same thing as IKEA, right? Flat pack refrigerator, send it out. Okay. So these are the kind of technologies which our young people must begin to think. This is 2 megawatt of algae farm per hectare. thorium, right? Thorium is a huge development that's now, the Chinese are way ahead of the US. Trump has just approved next year's budget for thorium research in the United States, right? So we have a future, but we must take initiative. So just very quickly, I'll show you urbanization. This is a presentation I made to Keadilan. This is Narul Izzah, the daughter of Anwar Ibrahim. They are very interested in it.
Wearing a jacket.
Huh?
They're actually wearing a jacket.
You know, I have to be polite. This was invited to a meeting in Japan, in the India-Japan partnership summit. And they're interested in the urbanization of the Ganges Valley, right? Because half the total amount of food for India is produced by the Ganges Valley, Ganges plain. And that is because half of it is rotted. Bad management, bad transportation, bad storage, you know, lousy food handling. So they need to have urban settlements all over in order to organize the logistics. Meeting with Aung San Suu Kyi, she told me, point blank, you're an architect. I said, yeah, look after the village. So yes, madam. This is the Chief Minister of Selangor. They are seriously looking at the urbanization of Selangor because he realizes if they can do that, they will be in power forever. And this is my latest thing. This is a month ago, my meeting with General Nida, who is the head of the Karen independence movement in Myanmar. Okay. Very interested to do rural urbanization in order to advance his people. Okay. Thanks. So can I invite you all to give me a clip? See all this rubbish.
I'll just make some brief remarks on Kheng Soon's remarks. I like your 52-year-old car. I think the problem is we have an engine that is not working and is deteriorating rapidly, but we refuse to acknowledge that it needs an overhaul. The mother of all our problems, even if everything Kheng Soon says he has suggested, they all get done, the mother of all our problems will undermine everything that he has talked about. And so what is the mother of all our problems? A little known fact, I emphasize the word fact. We are the only country in the world where the government, from a cash flow perspective, does not spend a single cent on healthcare, pensions, or public housing. Because the money that the government collects from each of these areas every year exceeds the money that they spend. It's unique in the world of fiscal policy. No other country does that. And that is the mother of all our problems. Because no matter what you do, unless you change this policy, nothing's going to work. I just make one more very brief remark. And then you need to listen to the more important person, because he's the man whom I quoted recently on the elected presidency. The other problem we have is most people don't sit in the car anymore, you know. I fly 40 times a year. I probably spend more time on the plane than the car. So, like Kheng Soon said, we need to think out of the box. We need to change our mindset. If we keep thinking of the car, we are finished, because you should think of flying or something. So, my final remark. Even the MOE does everything you say, mindsets change in 5 years. all your efforts will be undermined by another ministry. Because if you look at the labour statistics, in the last 2.5 years, we had employment growth of about 15,400 local jobs in 2.5 years. Foreign jobs, 31,000. So you said, okay lah, for every one local job we created 2 foreign jobs. But still have 1 local job, right? But here's the problem. In the last 2.5 years, we granted about 75,000 new PRs and 50,000 new citizens. So simple mathematics. Locals is Singaporeans and PRs. If just a quarter of the 70,000 PRs in the last 2.5 years were foreigners holding jobs, the moment they are converted to PRs, they become local jobs. None of any of the jobs went to Singaporeans. Thank you.
Yeah, but all these statistics are based on existing kind of economy, right? Which is in decline.
Yeah.
So it's all based on export economy and so on. And when that goes, then the foreigners will go. Simple as that.
Provided the ministry changes the policy.
Yeah. So that's why we are in this very transitional moment where the old policy is still running through. But I think the situation is changing rapidly, and I think we must think ahead of that.
Kheng Soon, thanks again, once again. I've been talking to Kheng Soon about these ideas for a very long time actually. So I can't really disagree with them as ideas. I think as ideas they are wonderful, and as always I tell Kheng Soon, you get too many ideas. Every time you got 10 ideas, let's pick one and try and make it work. Then you know what his answer is? That's the problem lah, they're all good lah. And it's true, they are all good. The problem is they remain ideas. And they will always remain ideas unless we can in some way operationalize them. My
job is the roadmap.
Yes, I know, the roadmap.
If you want to write, if you don't want to write on the follow the roadmap, it's your problem now.
That is a problem. I think instinctively many of us would probably think that the roadmap is a good idea. I like the idea of having more students on campus. I think this central nervous system is a very good idea. We worked on the super school concept together. I personally, as an educationist for over 30 years, I think that it is important for us to change the way we teach our students. I think, at one time we all aspired to go to university. I think I look around the room, I think many of you my age or maybe even older than me, we had 5 to 7% of our cohorts go to university. Everybody else didn't go to university. 5 to 7%, that's pretty low, but at the same time, the fact is that university education is a kind of education, it's a type of education. It's not the pinnacle of education, it's just a type of education. And it suits people who are very good cognitive learners, people who want to learn how a car is made. You read a manual, that type. Like me, I want to know how my phone works, I start reading the manual. But not everybody is like that. My daughter is not like that. She takes the phone, she figures it out and then gives it back to me, right? Because they don't learn cognitively, they learn by watching, they learn kinesthetically, so many other ways of learning. And really, statistically, you are talking about maybe 20% of the entire population of each cohort who are really cognitive learners. So if you want to try this idea of trying to push university education beyond your, say, 20-25%, then I think you're going to have a problem, because you're going to either have to change the way your university is structured, in other words, the way we teach and the way we learn, or you're just going to be tearing out your hair, because that's not how these people learn. That's one. That's the nature of, I think, each generation. Doesn't matter which generation you come from. Now I'm talking about situations where it matters what generation you come from. The current generation is a very, very different generation from the time when we went to school. Things in completely different ways. And again, in the super school concept, this is where we were. Of course, every time we couldn't figure something out, we go to YouTube, and then some joker will put in something that's very useful, and then you say, that's basically how you can get it done. And this is the way in which the access to this kind of information guarantees a change in the mindset of how people learn. So you don't really need a lecturer. The magisterial lecture is dead. No point you put somebody in front there, give some grand lecture. I mean, if it's a theoretical performance, if it's, just enjoy watching the guy listening to that voice, whatever, well, fine, But by and large, if it's just for obtaining information, that's probably dead. But you know what? We continue doing it. We continue assessing people how good lectures they give. We ask students how good the lectures are, what are the failings, and so on and so forth.
Because that's the KPI, you see.
That is a KPI, exactly. So the problem here with many of these ideas is, I think, we are faced with it at two levels, on two fronts, and I think that was epitomized by the exchange about changing the mind of mommy and daddy and so on. It's not enough that you tell the government to change, even if the government wants to change. Don't forget, the government gets voted in by mummies and daddies as well. Right? So you might not be allowed to change. And so if that is going to be the case, then you've got major problems on your hands. I don't see many of these to be real problems in the sense of as an idea. I think it's a very good idea. I think there may be some issues where you say, oh, it doesn't matter which university you come from. You're going to have major resistance by your polytechnics, by your university, by your alumni associations who build on this rivalry again to make money, right? I mean, to not make money, but to raise money. So we are better, we are NTU, we're better than NUS, or NUS, we're better than SMU, whatever it is. Then of course the alumni will contribute, and of course, people like KC will be able to, get people to give money to the various universities. But that's going to be a major resistance, because people are not going to say, well, it doesn't matter where you come from. It will continue to matter. You've got a problem with a government, and as Kheng Soon rightly pointed out just now, you're setting aside millions and millions of dollars just for ranking. We are so obsessed with ranking. And it's not just the government, mind you, it's parents. So it's a problem at two levels, right? One, the government is obsessed with rankings, but that percolates down somehow to the parents as well, because the parents are also obsessed with ranking. What primary school you come from? When they abolished ranking from primary school, or citing which are the good primary schools, some parents went into panic. Oh, then what do we do, right? So you've got problem and resistance at these two levels. The only way in which you can break through is if you have a ground-up change in mindset. So it's a cyclical problem. Who is going to fund this change in the mindset? The fact that your student came in, I think that's a remarkable thing, which I think is important, because once you have alternative sources of funding, you can change things. A lot of things are being done outside of the general perimeters today. Tay Kheng is here. He has a little place called the Agora, where very interesting, edgy kinds of talks. I'm giving a talk this Saturday here, there anyway, are taking place. This is not something that would find favor with, say, the National Library, if you were going to do the same kind of talk, or you're going to find it in some kind of public institution. But private enterprise can actually support this. You would need a lot of this to effect a major change in the mindset. But you know what? Success breeds success. If you start with a small group, it begins to work, people will say, hey, how come that one works better? Let me just tell you something which I think some people don't know. A lot, and Kheng Soon mentioned this, is absolutely true. It continues to be true to some extent, maybe less today than in the past. Right? In the past, we all wanted to send our children, or we all thought that if you could afford it, you send your children overseas for an education, UK, US, whatever. Today, it's a little bit different. There's still parents who think that way. Many of my friends will ask me, oh, where do you think I should send my daughter for a law degree? And I say, well, unless it's Oxbridge, don't bother. Why? Because if you want to practice in Singapore, we rank higher than all the others. But the point here is that, that there is this colonial mindset about this. What is the difference in mindset between people who really believe in the region? Years ago, I also happened to teach adjunct at the RSIS, Rajaratnam School of International Studies. And we got an applicant from a young man. And in the application form, you have to fill in the name of father and so on. The name was, father name, Susilo Bambang Yoho. And we say, yeah, sure. We didn't believe it. But it was SBY's son. He was his elder son, coming to do a master's degree. So Barry Desker, who was the dean at the time, was quite taken aback, sat him down and said, "Why are you applying for RSIS?" And he said, "You know, I sat down with my father and we discussed this matter. And he said, the future is in the region, you go to Singapore." So son number 1 came, graduated, son number 2 came, also graduated from RSIS. So they are,
Kobe's son went to ACS.
yeah, that one not yet, he's still in ACS, right?
No, graduated.
Or graduated. Then where you went? We don't know. Okay, well, the point here is, the people who come from the largest, most populous country in Southeast Asia think that the future is here. That the people they should be hanging around with are Southeast Asians, not hanging around with the Germans or whatever, right? It's here. So if they are thinking that way, why are we thinking differently, or what is it that makes us so different? I think this is where we need to also re-engage. And the good thing about Singapore is that we're very small. If we all decide to change our minds very fast, because there are not that many of us, right? No, I mean, seriously, you look at Indonesia, you try to change 250 million people, no joke, right? Here, 3.8 million Singaporeans, change that mindset, not that hard. And if we change, well, you've got the advantage of size because we are nimble, we can do things. So I don't know how much more I can add to this equation. I think the ideas are all wonderful. I particularly like the university idea, the idea of Boston or ASEAN. I think that one is eminently doable. Because, you see, if the housing project takes off, then you will start to see changes already. You don't need to go and change the classroom. You don't need even to tell them to change the KPIs as to who gives best lectures and so on and so forth. A lot of it is talk. 5 years ago, the whole NUS was talking about MOOC, mass online courses, mass online something, MOOC, SE, anyway. It's the big online courses, Coursera. We joined the Coursera consortium and all that. And all of us...
It's dead now.
It's dead, exactly. And every one of us was told, hey, you've got to do online courses. And then, of course, some of my colleagues who were very keen on making sure they meet all the KPIs, they started doing some of this. And not very exciting ones, because what you do is you just video yourself giving a lecture, which frankly quite boring. Why do I need video? If I hear your voice, podcast enough already, right? Unless you're doing some demonstration, you're doing, I don't know, some performance. Otherwise, what's the point of videoing the guy, the talking head down there, like a news reader like that? No point, right? And so I tried something different. And the whole law faculty was getting quite excited about it, and I got some money for it. And I said, I want to shoot BBC style videos, go on location, do something that, hopefully when the students watch it, they remember things, which we managed to do. Right? We shot. It was crazy. I nearly died because I shot 26 episodes in 4 months. Each one half an hour. With editing, with everything. I didn't sleep very much for those few months.
No, that explains it.
It's still being used, right? After 5 years, we're still using the same videos. I'm about to try to get some more money to revise some of them because the law is outdated in some cases. The point is, of course, after all that song and dance, everyone said, wow, very good, fly the flag and so on. I was asked to give a demo to the rest of the faculty to see, how we can do it. And I sort of went into the techniques, what we tried to do, and what I learned, and what the mistakes I made. And nobody has ever tried it after that. And probably because it's too hard. And of course, the point is that the KPIs didn't change. If only I suddenly, or it was quietly made known that I somehow got a, 12-month bonus because of that. I did not, I lost sleep and everything, but I didn't get. But let's say I did, and it was known somehow, you think people won't start doing? Come on, 12 months bonus, not bad, Anyway, I think money does work. We need to find the people who will fund this. If the state won't fund it, then you've got to find it from other sources, or you've got to make it for yourself. But with that, I thank you very much, Kheng Soon, once again for inviting me.
My name is Tay Kheng Soon, retired long ago from Keppel Shipyard, and Kheng Soon for inviting me here. I didn't quite know what the format was. He says I'm going to sit in the panel. I thought we were all going to sit up here and you're all going to ask questions.
If you sit here, you cannot see the screen.
So I didn't prepare any material. He says no need to prepare anything. Just come. Yeah. So I got to do this randomly as the idea struck my head. I just, after that. Okay, I retired from Keppel way back, and I've taken a passionate interest in developing a new solution to solve Singapore's land shortage problem, right? And that solution is floating structures, right? So I have, over the last 4 years, been talking to various government agencies, JTC, PS, MPA, URA, and so forth. I've also given lectures overseas. Of all places, I went to Australia and talked to them about floating nuclear power plant. And that's the last thing they want to hear because they're selling coal. Right? I went to UK, Bristol, and tried to sell the idea of a floating naval base, right? So that instead of a naval base stuck in one corner of the UK, you could have a naval base that is moving around to wherever it is needed, right? So I thought that was a good idea, but it didn't catch on. And here in Singapore, I'll come to the floating bridge. Just give me a Here in Singapore, I have Straits Times have kindly given me space, and I've written a few articles. One of them is floating East Coast Park. All right? East Coast Park is 185 hectares, right? Multiply that at, I don't know what it is, $1,000 a square feet, and you do the sums, the value of that piece of land there is, if I remember correctly, something like $20 billion, right? If you could put East Coast Park on the floating structure, right, with all the, the trees, the beaches, the running tracks, the cycling tracks, all floated up somewhere 1 kilometer from the shore, you release 185 hectares of land that could be used for lots of other things. So that's one idea. The other idea is floating database. Singapore likes to be the hub of everything. Hub for shipping, hub for aviation. The next thing is the hub for Internet of Everything, data centers. The thing with data centers is that it consumes a lot of energy. And a lot of that energy is used simply to cool down all the electronics that are firing away. And that's the reason why some of the biggest data centers are up in the mountains in China, where they get the advantage of cold air, right? And also in Scandinavia. My idea is put data centers in the sea, right? And as Kheng Soon says, in Singapore you have to be second best. Somebody else must try it before you try to sell it to others, all right? And in fact, they are already doing it. If you go and Google Microsoft, all right, they are already experimenting with this subsea data centers. If this idea catches on, and I spoke to Keppel about it, I think they're pretty excited. If this idea catches on, what we could do is to put data centers in, around our waters, and we could be a major hub, right? And it's also, Singapore is well known for data security and all sorts of other security. So it's attractive because of that. And we can somehow solve the energy problem, I think we could go along with it, right? So that's the one idea. And now, I also wrote to Straits Times about floating nuclear plants, right? And they've invited me to write another paper, and I've agreed. The next paper will be excluding nuclear power is not an option for Singapore, right? We must have nuclear. Why? Because we have no renewables to speak of. We don't have hydro, we don't have wind. People are saying the solar, but solar in fact is very expensive because you occupy a lot of space, right? And it's not energy dense. That means you could have an entire hundreds of acres of solar panels, and the energy that you can get per year, right, is pretty small.
Floating solar panels.
Whether it's floating or land, okay. Even in the sea, you would need vast areas. I just read an article about this big one in China, in Huanan city or something like that. And it is 40 megawatts, right? It covers an area, I quote, 160 American football fields, right? Which I convert. That's about 85 hectares. That's quite a big place, right? Bigger than, I think, Polytechnic campus. The trouble with solar is that, you get energy when the sun is shining. And as the sun goes from the horizon to the zenith and sets, the angle changes. So the energy impact on the solar panel is all changed, right? So of course now they try to track the sun with these articulated panels, but that presents another problem. The more mechanism you have, the more maintenance. So solar, if you look at Germany, it's supposed to be, the world's foremost in solar energy. They only got 7% of the energy requirements produced by solar, right? So not easy. And I think we need nuclear, okay? For a few reasons. Nuclear is safe, right? And nuclear is uranium-235, which is being used currently. We haven't come to thorium yet, right? It's very energy dense. 1 ton of uranium can produce the same energy as 91,000 tons of oil. All right? So for energy security, if you want to stockpile energy with oil, you need to have huge amount of the space to stockpile. Jurong Rock Cavern in the first phase is only 1.47 million cubic meters. That is equivalent to about 5 days oil storage. Not quite enough. Japan has got 169 days of oil stockpile. Oil. Now they are wanting to build stockpile in LPG. And they are also holding stockpiles of uranium, right? Because energy security is extremely important. If you run out of energy, your whole economy collapses, right? In March this year, they were debating very passionately in Parliament about water security. But, if you don't have energy, water security also goes out the window. Because how do you disseminate? How do you transfer? Right? Everything tries to stop if you have an interruption in the supply chain of energy. So my proposal is floating nuclear power plant. And here again, we are not the foremost, we are not number one, because already China is doing it, right? Russia is doing it. And since the 50s, there have been nuclear submarines, right? So nothing is new. Right?
China is building 6 nuclear plants per year.
Yeah. Nowadays, they have this thing called SMR, small modular reactors, right? And each of them is like, anything between 50 to 300 megawatts per unit. Built in the factory, delivered by truck, delivered by train, by ship, to wherever you need it. And once you have that kind of technology, you can put it on a floating structure and put it anywhere. So those are the kind of possibilities that I see. Singapore, we have 700 square kilometers of sea space, which I've been talking to MPA. We should try to better utilize. Because right now, practically MPA is taking all our water space. And that's really not effective use of our resources. Okay? So, I've been pushing this for the last 4 years. Okay, coming back to the big vision that Kheng Soon had. Yes, it is very possible to build floating bridges. And here again, we are not the first. Seattle, which Kheng Soon mentioned, has got a 2.1 kilometer of floating bridge in the, I think called Lake Washington, right? You can Google for it. And that's, in fact, the first one was built some years ago. And the traffic was so high, now they had to upgrade it. They want to build a second one. And guess what was their choice? Floating solution. Okay? So, floating bridges are also common in Norway, in the fjords. Why? Because the fjords are so deep that you can't possibly do a pile foundation. Some of them are thousands of meters down, right? So they've come out with a solution of floating bridges and then somehow mooring them, right? The next innovation they're going to have is not floating, but semi-submerged. So on above it, ships can move up and down, unobstructed. Then this tunnel to develop, to research into floating storage tanks for storing oil, right? And the other part of the research is floating bridge, right? It's supposed to be a generic design where you can apply it to anywhere. Okay, so it's gaining traction. Now coming back to the bridge from Bintan to Singapore and Singapore to Sumatra. I know it's doable because a colleague of mine was involved in a project where he built, not that he built, but he was involved in the supervision of a floating concrete structure, 114 meters long by about 38 meters wide, right? 38 meters is more than 4 lanes. And that was built, that was designed by Alfred E. I don't know how many of you know him. Yeah. He is a very highly decorated American engineer living in Singapore for quite a while. And so this structure was built in Batam, right? By people who have no previous experience. They were just engaged to, bend rebars and pour concrete. Anyway, this structure was built for about 10 million US dollars, right? If you divide the surface area or rather $10 million by surface area, you get something like $2,000 a square meter, around that in the US. So it's not big money, right? Cheaper than land in Singapore. You know, land in Singapore is like $20,000 per square meter, or $1,000 a square foot, right? So it's doable, and it's proven that it can be built even with villagers, you know, people from the kampong, fishermen. You don't need qualification like shipbuilding, you need qualification in welding, right? So what Kheng Soon says is absolutely correct. If we build this bridge, we could build it in Indonesia, we help the economy there, right? They'll probably be very happy with the whole exercise, I think. So, yeah, just to finish off with this dock. This dock was built in Batam. The floating structure was built in Batam. Actually, it forms part of a floating dock for docking ships, right? So this dock was built in Batam and towed across the Pacific Ocean to Hawaii, because the crime is in Hawaii, right? If you go and Google, it's in Google. The shipyard in Hawaii called Marisco. So if you Google Marisco floating dock, Batam, all right, you'll find pictures of this dock that was built there. It was launched in, I think, May this year. So yes, I think the idea of floating bridges to connect the islands is very feasible. The other challenge is how to moor this, right? Floating is no problem, right? Archimedes principle, whatever you submerge there, whatever water it displaces is equal to the uplift. So you can calculate how much buoyancy is by simple arithmetic, Archimedes principle. The challenge is how to moor it, right? So that you can take the lateral forces.
I've solved that, no need to more.
Sorry?
I've solved it, no need to more.
But we have all the technologies in Singapore because we have been building oil rigs, right? What we call semi-submersibles and jackups. And these semi-submersibles are moored in water that are at 1,000 meters deep, but they are just floating on top, right? How do they keep that against, up there the wind is like 100 kilometers per hour, or 200, it's like a hurricane. And the waves are like 20 meters high. So our shipyards already have solutions for mooring this kind of structures in very hostile environment. So mooring it out there in Batam is not a big challenge. Okay? So it can be done. Right. I think that's about all I can say at the moment. If you have any questions.
There's somebody who wants to say something.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just a technical question, and
Sure.
that is, when you have a floating bridge,
Yeah.
obviously a ship cannot pass.
Okay, yeah.
So then you have to have another segment of the bridge where the ships can pass, right? Is that your suspension bridge?
Yeah.
That means it has to be high enough for the ship to pass under. Is that
No. The big suspension bridge is where the shipping lanes are.
Okay, if you go
So
into
that's
that,
very high. But
you
you
look
still need to allow for small boats to pass through the floating bridge, right? So there would be intervals where the small boats can go through. Okay. But those are not big spans.
there's only one section in that from Singapore to Sumatra. There's one section that passes through the shipping lane, all right? And that's the Straits of Singapore, all right? From near Sister Island, okay, to Singapore.
Yeah, just between Pulau, the oil terminal, what is it?
Rani.
Not Rani, right?
No,
On the Indonesian side.
Starts with S.
Yeah.
Starts with S.
Selat
Sambu,
Sambu.
Pulau Sambu and St. John's Island.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a shipping link.
Okay.
So it's 3.8 kilometers per span, but there's a rock in the middle, right? So you can have one column right in the middle, so you can break it down into less than 3.8, so it's doable.
Anyway, that span is not as big as the Straits of Malacca that the Chinese are taking off.
No,
So-
same span,
Huh?
because the maritime shipping lane is
Okay.
controlled by
3.1.
international.
Okay, I'm thinking of the entire bridge, not the suspended. Okay, so only that section requires high bridge. The other sections between the islands there maybe there are passage for small boats and so-called ferries and all that. There are other solutions to that. Either you have a not so high bridge, or you could have a bridge that swings open. All right? Or you have a bridge that.
The Dutch have done a lot of those swinging
Yeah.
bridges.
So there are many solutions for small ships, small boats, ferry boats. So all solutions are really existing around the world. Okay? And there was something else that I wanted to say, I just forgot. Yeah, any more questions?
Sunek,
Yeah.
instead of transferring your whole of the East Coast Park onto a floating platform, why don't you take the equivalent amount of space and build a whole housing estate on it?
Yes, in
Is the
fact,
displacement a problem?
no. In fact, I wrote a piece in Straits Times about a year ago. It's called Vision SG 100, in which I described this idea.
So it's certainly doable.
Doable. I mean, you can build an entire condominium of 1,000, not quite as dense as this, I don't know what you call that, 1 square kilometer with 100,000 people. Doable, but I wouldn't like to live in that house. So, right.
No, but I mean, I come back to this because one of the problems which actually we are preparing and have prepared for already is the rise in sea levels.
All right.
And obviously, we are accommodating a 1 meter rise in sea level for Singapore. All the roads along the coast have already been raised.
Right.
But if the sea level raises, say, 4 meters,
Right.
then we are in trouble.
If it is 1 meter, there's a problem. In fact,
Yeah.
somebody wrote an article in the forum page, and I challenge the idea. I mean, if this was a simple island, right, and the sea was all around you, right, and you just build this part here,
Yeah.
raise it by 1 meter or 2 meters, right, then what happens if it's flood? It cannot go. You are trapping water within your. So actually, the Dutch, they're famous for their older system, the dikes. They're going away from that. If you go and Google Marin, M-A-R-I-N, which is an institution that is doing a lot of research, they are currently doing experiments with a model which eventually, when it's built, is going to be 3 square kilometers, right? On which they're going to put all sorts of assets, houses, factories, and all that. 3 square kilometers, quite big, right? So it's doable.
Floating,
and-
right?
Floating.
Yeah, so that was my next point, right?
Yeah.
In which case, I mean, Keppel and all these people have plenty to do. We just have to float the whole of Singapore, right? I mean, you rise 5 meters, no problem. I mean,
Exactly. I actually, I was invited by Keppel to give a talk on this, and even the CEO, the new CEO, just on, and the rest, they're all there, a few other MDs and general managers. I'm telling them, look, the days are gone, or will be gone pretty soon when you run out of fossil fuel, and who is going to be drilling, right? Right. So you need to diversify, right? you need to respond to all the disruptive technologies that is coming on, all right? And one of the big disruptive technology is floating structures. And if you don't want to respond to that, all right, you're dead, all right? So Keppel is doing it. I know for sure. I sent them what I think of a floating data center, and the response was very good, pretty encouraging. Right? So we have all the shipyards, we have all the technology to float structure, we have all the technologies to anchor them, to moor them, right? But we are not getting the right receptions from the government agencies, right? The URA, the PCA, the MPA, the JTCs, right? They are still not receptive to the idea. Very slow, right?
Yeah, because I think this is the issue that is really the big problem now.
Yeah.
I alluded to this in my discussion about the Lee Kuan Yew, Tay Kheng Soon generation, right? They were hands-on.
Right.
That generation was hands-on. They worked with the bureaucrats. Today, the bureaucrats have their standard operating procedures and they just go by it. And the ministers, I don't know why they are not telling them off.
Yeah.
Right? For example, the issue on allowing small and medium-sized enterprises to be housed within the educational zones like polytechnics or NUS or universities, because the zoning for education is zero land cost.
Yeah.
And yet, URA says you put a limit on the number of non-academic functions that you can put into NUS, for example, because they have their standard operating procedures, and ministers somehow are not interfering in it. It's a hands-off situation, you see.
Because they know they won't be there for very long. Yeah.
In fact, Jack Sim was telling me, I invited Jack Sim to be here. Unfortunately, he has to be away. Jack Sim was telling me he brought a very important idea to a minister. And the minister heard him out. And you know what the minister said?
I won't be here to do it.
I'll leave it to the next minister. This is the situation now.
Korea is.
But that is why I was very pleased with Ong Yi Kang. I was surprised. Yi Kang says, do it. That's the difference, you see. So I think that
He needs to be Prime Minister, that's why.
we don't know. But the point is that I think what you are illustrating is that this is the general description of the situation. But there are situations in which independent decision can be made. For example, although JTC will not be pro some of those ideas, but because capital is pushing it, it brings in a whole different dynamic, you see, right? So one needs to be very wise about who you are dealing with and what is his KPI. If you put them all into one basket, then you will never get anything done. I'll give you another example. I'm against real estate profiteering, because real estate transfers into rental, right? Let's take coffee shops. Every cup of coffee you drink, $1 or $1.20, half of that goes to pay for the land cost. Okay? Why? Because the landlord has to charge the coffee operator or the chicken rice stall or the roti prata guy $5,000 a month, because he has to cover his mortgage. Okay? Now, Murali was standing for election in the by-election in Bukit Batok. Okay? I said on Facebook, I don't care who gets elected, whether it's Chee Soon Juan or Murali. I don't care. As long as you implement food street, using shipping containers, I can drive the rental cost down to $1,000 a month. So when Murali was elected, and because Murali has to build up a rapport with his constituents, right? Which are mainly Chinese, he's not Chinese, right? So he has an incentive to bring the price of coffee down. So he accepted the idea of food street. So we are moving it. It's happening. So you got to understand the motivations, you see. Because if you say that all PAPs, blah blah blah, the bureaucrats are like that, then you never get anything done. Okay? So, give you another example. The NUS student housing thing, right? I don't know whether I should say this, but I'll say it. The budget, the money is there, but the budget is not there, okay? So, I got frustrated. So I said to the estates department, do you agree that I go and raise the funds with the existing foundations? They said, go ahead. Then I thought about it. If I did that, then it will be a very shamefaced situation for the senior administration, right? You got money, because the foundation will say to me, hey, I give them $500 million already, right? Why don't you go and ask them? Then I asked them and they say no. Then I cannot say that, right? Because I'm slapping the senior administration in the face. So I'm stuck, right? So, out of the blue, I had a meeting, I had a chance meeting with the new president of the council, Xia Fuhua. Okay? So, I explained to Xia Fuhua this whole problem. Xia Fuhua said, I will do something about it. Next thing I heard, Vice Chancellor moved out, and Tan Eng Chai is the new Vice Chancellor. You get it? I don't know whether there's a direct correlation.
I don't think so.
I don't know if there's a direct
Tan
correlation.
has been wanting to step down long time.
But the fact is that the person who agreed with the project, which was instructed by the minister, is now the one to activate it. Perfect. You see what happens? Right? Xia Fuhua is a very powerful person.
I give you some examples of my own frustrations. Right? I met some PUB people at some conferences, and I talked to them, and they are, oh yeah, it's awful about it. So I got a bit frustrated. I wrote to DPN Taman, right, about my idea, which is basically, why are we building this desalination plants on the land when you got to draw in water from the sea, right? Why don't you put it in the sea when the water is just there, and then you don't have to pump the water inland and then water goes there, right, build on the sea, right? And then you can just pump it and pipe it in, right? Save you land. You can build this thing for a fraction of the cost of the land on the island, right? So Tana responded within, he's very great. He responded very quickly. He said, that's a good idea, right? I'll get my agencies to look into it. So next thing, PUB called me, right? The same people I talked to, they called me up and want to talk to me. So I brought in Keppel because they have the technical solutions to building desalination plants on the floating structure. I mean, they built FPSOs, so this is nothing. So we talked, and then big meeting, and after that, thank you very much, nothing has happened.
But it will happen someday.
Anyway, so I'm just about to begin writing another paper which not only provide them the desalination, but I'm going to include a floating reservoir, right? And the funny thing in Singapore is that we receive 2.3 meters of rainfall per year. We consume the equivalent of 1 meter. What happened to the rest?
Into the sea.
Back to the sea.
Yeah, and they say save every drop of water that falls on Alright? So half the water is gone to the sea. They have not managed to harvest that. Right? Now I'm working with a final year student in the NUS to come up with a concept that could capture the other half. Right? And store it in the sea. Alright? And not only that, we can build a park around this reservoir. So it's a reservoir, a park, and everything else. We can have a marina, we can have a golf course, right? And let's see the kind of reception that we're going to get. Okay?
Half the water price.
I mean, I cannot understand why they say water is crucial, and then they forget about energy. Right?
So our issue now is that Singapore actually has a lot of talented people, a lot of technical knowledge, capabilities, but the decision-making process is very cumbersome. Okay, but it is not a situation in which it is solidly frozen. Right?
I mean, we need more young powers and
yeah, but there are, I mean, people like Tarman, people like Ikang and so on. These are, people like Murali, these are the people that we have to work with. So I think that we need a much more nuanced attitude towards complexity, right? It's not all solid, right? So I think that it's important that the thinking people, right, should not be afraid to generate ideas, right? But they must be strong ideas, right? And given the internet age now, all ideas can be in the public domain, right? So that it makes it difficult for people who want to blog. You know? People ask questions, why? You see, because information is there, so we must use this thing. You see, this is the power. Okay. So I think that I hope today's discussion we should end soon. But I think that on a note of optimism, I think cautious optimism. I think we should push ahead, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Thank you very much.
Introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Jackson Cho. I'm an associate member of the SEGG. It's quite obvious I'm younger than the two gentlemen here. I hear a lot of good thinking, and these are the best I've seen here. Thought leaders, opinion makers, people who dare to voice them. Many of us are just sitting here, wow. But I discern three takeaways from this talk today. I'm born in 1965, I'm 52. The year of independence, not a pioneer and all that. I say to you, and you take it in the right spirit, all right? You persevere. There's this saying that a prophet is not welcome your own land. With due respect, Mr. Leong, and many other people, are you conscientious people who never stop believing that you can. You see, but before the distract, we think the more the people know, we review. I got this site, I got this blog, and then people finally will deem their while to try to transform society for the better. I think that's very noble, because the PAP has no monopoly on truth. And I'm a PAP member for 25 years since the first batch of NUS PAP youth week. But that's not about me. The thing is this here. You do something with Chinese, I tell you, wow, it works. At one time, IPC came back. IPC of their computer, Lingos is lifetime warranty, and all those era we went through. And then the creative got NASDAQ listed coming. Government says, wow. So please persevere. But I see one central takeaway between Mr. Lim Soon Heng, who is very laid back. You at least there's of fire. So it's not about personality. But one thing you have in common, that you have impacted your students. You see, out of the blue. And that's what it is since the ages of Confucius and so on. Believe that the future is very bright, because the idea will never die. You know, these bureaucrats, and all of us are bureaucratic in some way or form, but once you have organization culture, there are things it's like, and we try to encourage that people shouldn't serve out for personal motives. So we are against this US system that, they come in out private sector, Goldman Sachs, but eventually it'll be so. Nobody needs to sell their life. Even Lee Kuan Yew says himself, if he's a young man, he probably might not step into public office, but for very specific circumstances. When that happens, two things happen. If people go back to private, then public-private may not be a bad thing. And second thing is that, even public servants, after a while I move on, and so it becomes very short term, even though we always talk about long terms. And I like this thing called second best. So let me sum up. Three main key takeaways is number one, the idea. If you just believe that whether it's just a crowd, wherever, we do it elsewhere. When we adopt, today we say we want to be second best, because what's the proof of consequence? Nobody had a pioneering spirit anymore. But it's there. I think all the young people, these young men, many others. Right? The second point is that impact the young, because they will bring the legacy forward. And third thing is that it's the spirit of Singapore. We are an ideal. Right? We try to have this paradigm of idealist, pragmatist. What religion pragmatist? Singapore is an ideal. Lee Kuan Yew is a supreme idealist who make things happen. Right? I like this idea called life smart. The people skills, decision making skills, and problem solving skills. These three. Everything else you can Wikipedia and Google. Right? So the future for education, this infrastructure works. But you've been knocking doors. I want to highlight 3 points you didn't mention. This is the geopolitical situation with ISIS and so on, the Islamic. So you have a floating structure. It's very easy. For all the investment we put in are just underground, and then that's it. So many other things taken, but it shouldn't say, we cannot. We isolate, we do our part. Everybody play our own role. Things move forward. There are variable question marks, right? But I think the whole civilization advances because everybody just do your part. Your mission on earth, your passion, you make it happen. So on that note, I'm very, very honored to be here, listening to all of you, because all of you are trying to move us to a better place. Including Kevin Tan, I read so much in the Straits Times all the time. Today I hear him in person, so humorous. Thank you very much. And if you want to donate to Singapore Poly for the course, you don't have to graduate. I didn't graduate from Polytechnic, but there's SPGG Endowment Fund, for which the chairman, Mr. Jim Lim, the president of this club, is not here tonight because his wife's birthday. So please donate generously to the endowment fund. Thank you very much. I also sit on the committee. Thank you.
Let me just end up with one note following up on what you say. The idea of integrating the Polytechnic, SIT, and NUS into one university city, one education city, is something we must move in.
We must.
We must. So I hope that at the end of today's discussion, let's form a working group and do it.
I give my opinion. We built Town, the contractors, we are over there. I look at the building, create. It doesn't look inspiring at all. We have this vision, on the front. It's really like campus, like Silicon Valley. But never mind, it's not the buildings alone. This whole stretch, including those who live in the halls. My God, let me tell you one thing. You're away from your mom. I tell you, your mom, you are on the net all the time. You live 24 hours. The children sleep, don't sleep. Come on, it's dynamic. You rest when you need to do, and you work. That thing will impact on your life. Suddenly you realize it's not just about jobs. All right, all the future economy is about people believing that we can create, we produce, we are not inferior. So Lee Kuan Yew is wrong to say Singapore can never produce a Fortune 500. We'll be bought over, too small. Forget it, till then it happens. But let the people free. Let people dare to be as good, if not better.
So let the people free is the catchword. And the only way to do that for our students is they must live on campus. Then they are free.
My last word is this: respect authority. We are not anti-establishment, right? Singapore is for all of us.
It's for the good of all of us.
Amen.
And for the future generations. That's our aim. You want to say something?
I just want to make a very brief response. It's very interesting you are hearing from almost every person who has spoken that the stumbling block is, as you put it so well, to understand the guy's motivation, understand the KPI. So let me share you from a slightly different perspective. I'm old, but I learned something from the very young human rights activists these few days. Yeah, motivation, KPI. But what is more important, they taught me, is to figure out what they fear most. Okay? I don't have to mention the names, but the people who went to Hong Lim Park every month.
That means guided.
Okay? Until, one got sued and the other one got charged. Okay? Right? But you ask yourself, if not for that, the outcome is the outcome that matters, right? Kheng Soon, whether what you are saying, they're going to do it. Yeah. You think we have gotten your extra 1% on your CPF on the first 30,000 from age 55? You think you have gotten auto pledging on your property so that you can take, a lot of people can take out more money at 55? You think you have gotten the automatic low income, you get 20,000 at a certain age? So all this happened because these young human rights activists, they don't focus on the motivation, they don't focus on the KPIs, they focus on what I think you are afraid of, and they keep
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, panel, and also to the audience. And I think I have learned quite a lot. And I believe I put a lot of my time here. So please do justice to the hospitality of our host.